They mess up your whole makeup plan.
Oh.
That's what
You
I was
know,
saying.
Look on the positive, you really don't have to do makeup right
I
now.
know. And I was thinking about doing makeup to the front top of my face. And I said, no, it'll look weird. You know? It's just. And lipstick, forget about it. Right?
Yeah, nobody cares about that right now.
That's why I stopped wearing it.
Thank goodness. It was embarrassing.
Yeah. It didn't match your.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular board meeting for Monday, July 13th. I now call the meeting to order. Mrs. Petter, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moore,
Here?
Mrs. Cleveland,
Here.
Mrs. Wyder,
Here.
Dr. Hawkins,
Here.
Mr. Simons.
Present.
At this time, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Just to remind all of you and also our audience that we are in masks and social distancing. Per the agreement that we had, resolution we had approved in April, the public is participating via Facebook, and until we undo that resolution, it's at least in place until through December. So just to make everyone aware, there's no public participation, but they are watching everything that we're doing. So thank you. Can I have an approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments about the overall agenda? Okay, Mrs. Petter, please call the roll.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes,
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions before we vote? Anything anybody needs clarification on?
I will have a comment after the vote.
Okay.
If that's okay, thank you.
I'll have a comment before the vote,
Okay.
and that is that most of the items are clear, but there are some that need further expansion. I mean, I understand them, but since we have not talked to the board, I'm not sure if everybody understands. Since I'm the newest one, I can say everybody does, but I think if we had a more expansive handout from the beginning, then there wouldn't be that many questions.
Okay. But your comments will come later, or question. Okay. Anyone else before the vote? Mrs. Petter, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland. Yes.
The motion passes. And we start with Mr. Burton.
Thank you very much. Based upon the vote, and thank you very much to the Board of Education for supporting the personnel agenda items. Karen Harkness is going to be the new principal at Glendale Elementary School. She comes to us as an assistant principal from North College Hill elementary level. I know that throughout the whole process, she was very impressive to the different committees that she had to go through. The last stage was meeting with myself and Dr. Phillips. And Dr. Phillips and I were very, very impressed with her passion, her specific focus on excellence. She talked over and over and over about commitment and the difference between that and compliance. You could really tell in all of her answers. And she is ball of fire and really excited. And one of the things that we always ask is where you see yourself, and that was very, very impressive answer. We've had several different elementary principals at Glendale, but we look forward to having Karen be there for a long, long time. Special thanks to the committee for taking time out of their summer to help interview. We certainly appreciate that, and the great work, as always, of Ms. Tanya West-Wright. So we're going to welcome Karen with open arms from a social distance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
In regards to the short fuse timeline, hopefully this dispels any and all myths that Princeton is not still a place that folks want to come and work and further their career and have a career. For the last 5 years, I've been hearing that, oh, we can't recruit well in late summer or late in the contract year. But hopefully this shows that if Princeton puts up a flag, there will be people that are drawn to it.
Yeah, and I'll be first to admit that the quality of the pool was excellent, and in my 33 years and my last 5 at Princeton, late summer interviewing has always been problematic. Not that we haven't gotten great people, but you want as deep of a pool as you can get. This pool was deep, and in fact, there were several people that applied afterwards, but ultimately, it's always better to get hiring done earlier. You definitely get a different pool, but it was great to see the amount of people that we did have apply, which again was excellent. So thanks again to the Board of Education for moving so swiftly. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I do have a question or comment, I don't know which one this is, but
Okay.
as we look at many of the items that we just approved on the consent agenda, many of them are also, it appears, would be somewhat dependent on what happens next in terms of where we are with COVID-19. And so I wanted to see if you can just speak to that in terms of how we will make adjustments as the year progresses.
Good question.
Sure. So many of the agenda items were specifically based on each individual student's IEPs, if you're looking at outplaced. So those are all really dependent upon what's going to happen at the individual schools that they would be outplaced to, what they're specifically doing. If there's no school, for instance, in 1 or 2 of the service providers, or if that changes, it's still beholden upon us to provide that education, whether it is on a daily basis the best that we can, or ultimately down the line compensatory services. So specifically related to that, we're going to have to be like, unfortunately, we seem to have been for quite some time, a wait and see what everybody is going to do. But some of the students specifically that need additional services, some of them are medically fragile. So how that education looks could be very, very different than what we just approved. But we've had these service providers for quite some time and feel that we're going to be able to work well with them in case you have to make adjustments down the line. That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
A follow on to Mary's question. I think there are a lot of people that have heard the term IEP, but they really don't understand the legal mandates that enforce the IEP, and that some of our expenditures are not whimsical, but they are necessary. Could you explain the legal process behind an IEP in a short amount of time?
No. I can. I'll do my very best.
Okay.
Though, specifically when you look at an individualized education plan, we are mandated by law. If anyone is identified with having special needs, and there's a variety of different classifications. If you look at somebody who may have multiply handicapped, Down syndrome, autism, they could have an IEP for speech, for hearing, the list goes on and on and on. So we have about 16% of our population, Dr. Phillips, right? About 16% of our population that have been identified with special needs. I think the state average is about 19%. And in contiguous districts, we're probably right around where everybody else is. But ultimately, it's based upon a team that comes together, made up of our staff, made up of the child's mom and dad, and in some cases, the child themselves, right, depending upon their ability level. But ultimately, coming together and then trying to determine what the best route, the best educational route is for that student. Everybody has to agree, and then they come together, everybody signs off on the IEPs. There has to be a district rep. There's additional staff, teachers, people that actually have intimate knowledge of that student and how they are progressing throughout the course of the school year when an IEP is held. And then we take the data, our expertise, what the parents, what their thoughts are, and all that, and the child's thoughts are, and we pull it together to make what's called an IEP. That IEP, by law, must be followed. So in some cases, we have very significant students that have great need. In that case, we can, at Princeton, educate that child as good as other places can. So that's where you see some of the offerings that we have. We're able to house some programs and other programs we can't. And so it's very important to understand that it is, what we're trying to always deliver is called FAPE, F-A-P-E, free, appropriate public education. The appropriate for us, sometimes it's very, very different from the appropriate from parents. So that's where sometimes we have great conversation around what is appropriate. So sometimes, you know, using a car metaphor, sometimes parents want a Cadillac, where maybe a Honda is going to do, and it's going to be appropriate. So those service providers that you have in there, we've had great relationships with for a long time, and they're very much part of the IEP program as well, if the students have been there before. So we have to service, boy, a whole slew of students. So there are students, there's St. Joseph's Home, which is a residential program inside of our school district. Schools from outside may place that child through an IEP in our school district. So they're now there at St. Joseph's Home. Those students then need to be educated, and we educate. So in many cases, we don't have, and I know Dr. Phillips, I got off there a little bit, but in many cases, when we have students, and really like St. Rita's Home is there, but we have to pay for the education, even if it's somebody who is placed outside of their district in our district, but we get that money back. Okay. It is a very, very long program, and actually looking through, and I would love to have maybe not next work session, but sometime this year, really going through the whole process, and we can get Teresa Warren, our great director of special education, Dr. Phillips, and Dr. Jameson too, really talking about the process, because A, they know more than me, and B, when you look at the process itself, it is very time consuming. But we are a public entity, public education. We will always serve each student that comes through our doors, regardless of ability level, regardless of zip code, all that. We are going to take care of every single student the very, very best that we can, and certainly in an appropriate fashion.
And is that a state or federal mandate?
It's a federal mandate.
And are private and charter schools under that same mandate?
No.
No.
So when they
And parochial schools aren't either.
parochial schools, so when they cut public education budget, and then they give to other schools that are not public, that are not under these mandates, then that really raises our per pupil cost much more than it should be, because we're losing funding, but we still have the mandates that are now being unfunded.
Sure. Yeah, and I believe I talked about this a couple times last year, or the year before for sure. When we look at, so their students may come into the district, and they may be highly involved, and they may actually need a nurse. And they may, based upon the IEP, and that student may be placed in our school. That nurse is our cost. The transportation to and from, which sometimes could very well be in an ambulance, is our cost. That is the beauty of public education. But in that case, and Dr. Phillips, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that one, I think we're thinking the same situation. That's about $90,000 a year for that one student. But that's public education.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that, you're right, doesn't take too many of those situations. But again, we welcome, we love, and we're going to nurture and do everything that we can to take care of each and every one of our students. But that does increase significantly the cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for that.
Next item, district business. approval or transfer from the general fund to the athletic fund. Motion, please.
I move to approve the transfer from the general fund to the athletic fund.
I will second it. Mrs. Petter, any comments?
I'll discuss it, yes. The two transfers that are listed tonight are our standard annual transfers that we've been doing for numerous years here. The first one is to the athletics department. This money comes from general fund, goes into their athletic fund, which is a separate fund number. And for the last maybe 2-3 years, that amount has been $215,000. That money is then transferred to the athletic fund, and they set their budget up based on that. The athletic fund does have some revenue that's generated that goes directly into the athletic fund. So they might have donations from sources. They have certainly the gate at the events that goes into that. The pay to participate goes into general fund. It does not go into the athletic fund. So they have other smaller revenue sources that do go into that. But certainly the $215,000 that the board transfers from the general fund to the athletic fund makes up the bulk of their budget. Maybe another $100,000 in the other items.
So is that for simple numbers, K through 12, or just 9 through 12?
I would say you would call it 6 through 12.
6 through 12.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Petter, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is the transfer from the general fund to the Navy Junior ROTC program.
I move to approve transfer from the general fund to the NJ ROTC program.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any other comments or questions about
This
it?
item is $175. This amount has also been in place for multiple years. This money is used to fund two positions for both the instructors. We do receive some money from the Navy, but the majority of the money does come from the general fund.
That's a question. So we've always funded two positions in recent years,
That I am aware of.
and they're both full-time?
Yes, they are.
It's generally an officer and an enlisted person.
Yes, they are Navy personnel,
Mhm.
not anybody.
And if they're lucky, they recruit one or two of our students.
More than lucky. With over,
So
100 kids in the program.
Very
Yeah.
successful program.
But I mean, they actually, now, let me, that draws another question for me. If a student goes through the NJROTC, does that mean they must apply
No.
to be in the Navy? I didn't think so.
No.
At
Yeah,
this level,
no,
It's
Yeah.
more exploratory so that they can get a sense of what it would be like.
That's what I thought.
Also the discipline and all the other things that come along with it.
that's a good thing. My niece used to be in the program here, but she transferred to Sycamore before she could finish it out. But that's what led to my first question, which was, this is exploratory and they're not required to actually join the Navy. Thank you.
It's an extracurricular. Yeah. Any other questions? Mrs. Petter, please call the roll.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item, approval of creation of 509 Fund Title IV, Art B, 21st Century Learning.
I move to approve creation of 509 Fund Title IV, Article B, 21 Century Learning.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions?
This is a grant that we are in the process of applying for. Typically, the state takes a lot of these one-off type grants. They code them as a Fund 599. They have decided that this round, we are going to have a separate account number, fund account number for it, so it's going to be a 509. So this is the third new fund number you have approved in the last couple of meetings. So I don't know if this is a new trend with the state, but we shall see. So I assume this grant money will be approved hopefully before the end of August.
August 21st is when they say we're supposed to find out. And this is one, so we applied for 3 21st century grants. One in elementary school, middle school, high school. They're for $200,000 each, and they run the course over 3 years. So if we get it, we will have brought in an additional $1.8 million. If you guys remember, there's been a big focus with us with grants this year. We have, I'm going to say very conservatively, I know we talked a little bit about it before, but over $750,000 that we brought in this year alone. And just for year-over-year reference, last year we brought in some money, but not like this money. So I would say maybe about 50 or 60,000 the year before. We've been very intentional. We thank Dr. Michelle Kokar, who's done a great job with this. We also, at the tail end of last year, we were able to receive a $240,000 grant, which is over 4 years, $60,000 a year, and that's funding a position as well as a program. And the great Ms. Tanya Key does a wonderful job in that program. And so we're very appreciative of the outside organizations that really have kind of opened up in a lot of different ways, not only specific program, but their checkbook, which is always appreciated. So if we get this grant, that'd be huge. There's also another grant that we'll have to do another resolution for if we get that one, and that's through the NIMS, and that would be huge. That'd be 3 years, $250,000 a year. So one of the things that I promised you when you named me superintendent was that I was going to go out and look for alternative revenue streams. So those grants, if they all come back, knock on wood, say a prayer, do whatever, we'll have over $2 million that we will have earned and received just in those grants alone.
That's good news.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Tedder, please call the roll.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Simons.
Yes.
Motion passes. Approval of the June 2020 financial report.
Did we skip?
I think we skipped something.
Oh, did I skip the, I'm sorry.
Uh,
Item D.
Oh, yeah, I'll make that motion. I move to approve the temporary fiscal year 2021 appropriation resolution and certificate of estimated resources as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any comments or questions?
So this is our starter for the new fiscal year. We put it temporary in place, allows us to take in money, allows us to spend money. Then before, or by September 30th, the district must have its final appropriation and certificate in place. And then as the year progresses, there are still changes, as you are well aware, we do amendments to those. But this is our first starting point so that we can start the business of the district.
Okay. Comments, questions? Mrs. Tedder, please call the roll.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item, E, approval of the 2020 financial report.
I move to approve the June 2020 financial report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Comments or questions?
I just have a couple comments about the report. Of course, we've been talking about the last couple of months. We did end very close to, of course, the May forecast, which is the goal when you have just 6 weeks left in the year, that you come in pretty close. The expenses came in within $26,000 of expense. That's very good on our $80+ million budget. The revenue side, we came in short $492. The largest portion of this was a Medicare check reimbursement that we were expecting to land. When I had spoken with the entity, I had asked them, is this check coming before June 30? And they, of course, assured me it was, but That was pre-COVID. So I am sure a lot of people I know, certainly their work hours and what they can and can't do working from home has changed considerably. So this will be a timing item. We'll receive it. It's due to us. But that will put us really much pretty right on schedule. I did want to remind everyone on the revenue side that we did have the 1.4 million cut in state funding. So that was a loss compared to the November forecast. We also had an increase in revenue because we passed the levy in November. So we saw additional revenue for that. So our revenue picture was up for the fiscal year as anticipated after the passage of the levy. But we did not have as great of an increase because of the loss of that revenue. Expenses came in better over the fiscal year than the previous fiscal year, and that's because of the student wellness and success dollars. So we moved some of our expenses out of general fund into that fund, which we hope to have for 2 years. We don't know what we're getting yet this year for student wellness and success. So we hope to keep those expenses over there and save our general fund dollars a little more. We also had decreases in expenses. We need to remember this because things will look a little different because of the pandemic. So we had lower transportation costs. We had lower employee sub costs. We had lower utilities. These are things that we'll have to remember as we move past this year into out years and wonder why the expenses were so much lower when these expenses start coming up, when student wellness and success money goes away next fiscal year, unless it's a program we keep in place. Certainly, we hope to get that lucky. But these are things we have to just keep remember. We'll have them in the forecast notes as we move through to trigger our memory, so we don't worry about why expenses increase so much. It's just that it will be in a different fund, okay? But that's what we'll do. We'll keep reminding you that. Other than that, we just can't thank our taxpayers enough for the heavy lifting they did for us in November. It certainly did lessen the impact of that $1.4 million cut. We will, at this point, state is telling us it is another 1.4 million cut this year. They are hopeful that that is it. So that's just something we're going to have to keep watching, waiting, and listening, dependent completely upon the revenue situation at our state. So,
And
Just-
what is the cut to the private and charter parochial schools from the
they
state?
told us at the end of last fiscal year, they had received all their funding at the point when we were cut. Remember, it was midway through May when it dropped. They received their last funding, I think it's in February. They did tell us that it was too late to go take the money. They did take it from Princeton, remember. We wrote a check in June to the state. But that they would see a change this next fiscal year. So we get their numbers in August, so I'll make sure to let you know what that looks like.
So they gave them a pass this year.
They're gonna pass last fiscal year. This year,
Well, that's what I mean, last
Yeah.
year. Because I guess we start in
because their
July.
funding was already all in place.
Wasn't ours?
Well, in the case of
Yes.
Princeton, yes.
Okay, so,
I think-
so they received the pass last year,
Right.
but they're supposed to give them a charge this year.
That's what was said.
Okay.
That would be taken into consideration.
And just if I can comment on that, I just want everybody who's listening right now, we understand that this pandemic was a hardship on everybody. So we're, at least from my lens, not complaining one bit about the fact we need to do our part. We know that some of our parents, our community members lost jobs, lost businesses, and we understand that we have to do our part. The big rub, I think, is just we want everybody to do their part. And so when you look at how money was taken, it is what it is. So we wrote the check, did whatever we could. Again, we understand that there's lots of hardship that went around. We don't mind doing our part. It's just, kind of a tough pill to swallow when you look at state testing, which is still there, which I don't know how they're gonna do that this year. If you listen to some people, it's, 100 million. If you listen to others, it's closer to 200 million. State testing that they could eliminate. When you look at other ways that they could save money, they certainly could do that. Rainy day fund of $2.7 billion. There's lots of different ways that we feel that they could have done it. Now, we're not part of that decision, but again, we understand we need to do our part. So actually, believe it or not, the 1.4 million, even though I don't want to lose 1.4 million ever, or another 1.4 million, I understand that we have to do our part. We just want to, when we get our CARES dollars, that we keep all the CARES dollars, and we don't lose some of that money. And again, believe in school choice, have no problems with private and parochial schools, they're really good partners of ours. But ultimately, there's something that's not equitable when we have 1.4 million taken from us 2 years in a row. We get 1.6 million from CARES dollars, and we may have to pay out $300,000 to those same partners, which didn't have to take a cut.
Good point.
And so ultimately, I think we need to look at that. And again, we've great partners. Now, that may not happen to 300,000. We made a move today, perhaps, that we're going to be able to retain the majority of that money. But there's a lot of hoop jumping to be able to retain that money. So I just want everybody to know that we understand that some community members that are on this call, some parents, have had a really difficult time during this pandemic. We're not making light of it. We understand we need to do our part. We just feel that equity still needs to take place.
That's right. And could I add, it's interesting, we've got this $1.4 million cut, but we got an increase in revenue from the levy. How much did we make from the levy?
About 3.2.
3.2. And then also, it's interesting that tonight, we're approving about $19,900 for a local parochial school to provide them with technology. Yet you run into some taxpayers who will tell you, I'm not voting for that levy because my kid goes to private parochial school. But they need to remember, as the public school goes, so go the private and parochial schools. Because many of the services we provide to them, that's something that affects the levy.
We are their fiscal agent.
Thank you.
Those are all very good points, and that's why we need to have this in an open discussion like you brought up. So those that are participating and watching us understand the role that Princeton plays and how we're being affected financially.
Right. Any other comments? Mrs. Petter, please call the roll.
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, F, approval of contract with Hamilton County ESC.
I move to approve the contract with Hamilton County ESC for curriculum coordinator for school year 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments?
Sure, we'd just like to welcome Libby Stiles to the team. She comes to us with a wealth of experiences from Northwest School District, both as a middle school principal, as also high school assistant principal. She had a stint in a couple other school districts, or one other school district, but we certainly appreciate the fact that she came to us very, very highly regarded and did not disappoint when Dr. Phillips and I spoke to her. This is a great relationship we have with Hamilton County ESC to be able to do this. This is, when you look at this, part of her salary will come out of the new CARES dollars that I was just talking about. So if we're able to do what we're due, which I believe we will, we're going to actually, I think it was $250,000, Dr. Phillips? So $250,000 that we thought was going to leave, we're actually going to retain. And so part of her salary will be put to great use for that. And, we have a lot of work we need to do. This is obviously a big year for us, for everybody in this country. But when you look at the work that needs to be done, we just need additional support. And we're very thrilled to welcome Libby to the team.
Tom, what is her specialty or area of emphasis?
It will be primarily math, but it's curriculum in general. She has a wealth of experience, curriculum maps, list goes on and on. She was very, very impressive when he spoke, but she is a math expert.
Okay.
Is that K-12 or just,
It will be
K-12.
K-12.
any other questions? Ms. Petter, please call the roll.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes,
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, G, approval of agreement with Final Forms.
With what?
Final Forms.
Isn't it the
Worley
No, the
auctioneer.
Worley.
Oh, okay. Was G eliminated?
She was.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, guys. Item G then is approval of agreement with Worley Auctioneers and Appraisers.
I move to approve the agreement with Worley Auctioneers and Appraisers Incorporated as presented.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Comments?
I have a question after your comment.
Well, I'm just going to say, if anybody's looking for a piano, if anybody's looking for some old cafeteria equipment, we'll take a bid right now, a bid right now, a bid right now. Here we go, here we go. This is a great online auctioneer that we use. By law, we can't just take any old equipment and sell it to anybody we want. There has to be an auction. This will be made public. People will know about it. We will tweet it out. We will get it out as actively as we possibly can. And there'll be a start time and an end time. And at the end of it, if there's a bid, even if it's $1 or anything, that person would win that item. If there's no bid at all, then actually we can legally dispose of it.
How's it going to be advertised to the public?
Well, we'll put it on the website. We have to, by law, Chris, we have to put it in a newspaper, I believe. We also have to, we don't have to, but we're going to post it all over social media and all that stuff. We want to try to generate as much activity as we can on that. But I think we have three pianos, Chris, two
Three.
pianos.
Three.
Well, we have 2 stand-up pianos and like a baby grand or something that's been donated to us over the years, and the great music department we have. We've asked them, is there going to be any use for those? And I tell you, the people that come out wanting to donate pianos and so forth, it's amazing. Old equipment we have, old cafeteria equipment now, everything's as is because we don't know. There's some of those are quite old, so there could be some bargains in there.
So do you know when roughly when it'll be, in August or when?
Chris, do you know if you know the date, if you could, nope, no date yet? Okay.
Stay tuned then.
For the vehicles, is it legal to trade them? Or when we decide to dispose of them, they have to be auctioned off? In other words, if we're going to get a new vehicle, can we do a trade?
Sure, I think we could always do a trade, but ultimately, it really depends on the state of the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
It may not, we may have to pay somebody to take it, or we could do the auction, and if it doesn't go, we may be able to take it to the junkyard or just dispose of it.
So bring your tow truck.
I'm not saying that, but I'm not denying that either. We can neither confirm nor deny the use of a pickup truck and a tow truck.
My concern, oh, are you done? Sorry. May I? The information that I got in my packet says the items will be sold on July 9th. So I guess they're going to be sold more than one day. Because this one says it's going to be sold at 11786 Highway Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio. 3 box trucks, van, surplus cafeteria material, and it says the day of the auction was July 9th, so I've missed it.
No, we need to look at that. We need to look at that date. I believe that date's inaccurate.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Ms. Petter, please call the roll.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes,
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes. The motion passes. Item 4 is academic update discussion.
Okay, I have 3 pieces of information
Okay?
for you. I would like to go in order without you peeking ahead. It's very exciting, very exciting.
Want me to pass it down, or? Oh, okay.
You're dealing off the top and the bottom of the deck.
That's it. Sure to win.
Oh, thank you.
Sure to win.
Interestingly, today, someone brought a saxophone that's only 1 year old and the book that went with it to the closet. And then someone put on Facebook, Mrs. Weiber, do you want this piano? Well, I let Kristen Brown know about the saxophone.
That's good. I got a Wurlitzer I'm trying to get rid of. You guys interested?
Really, an organ?
No, it's a piano.
Oh, it's a piano.
It's tuned and everything, but nobody plays it, so it just sits there.
Dr. Phillips is
Oh,
passing these out. Thank you.
thank you.
So as Dr. Phillips is passing those out, I'm going to ask her also to go to the podium in case there's any additional questions that you may have. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. The first document I'd like you to look at is the update on the reopening survey. So the very first part of that, it shows right now, well, actually not right now. Then when it was printed, right, Dr. Phillips, we had 1,676 parents, but now we're over, I think, 1,800 now. So there's a big push. We had a lot of people sign up. So there shows the distribution of the different communities that have filled out the survey. When you look at the learning model, remember there's only 2 choices. You're going to come back traditional or the traditional / I should say, our flex A week, B week, and that's really predetermined, it will be predetermined on how many students choose remote learning. But we've already had, I think we're now well over 700 that have chosen to go specifically with one of the remote learning options, either 1 semester or 2. And if you look at the transportation that, how many people will need transportation, so we have 1,291 students that would need it. And then if you look at, if your choice is the child to return to August, what personal safety measures are important to you? And if you see, in general, there's a lot that are, so the top 6 parent responses, hand washing, and then temperature readings for students, staff, social distancing, masks for staff, and masks for students. So just as a reminder, we are going to have hand washing, routine breaks and whatever. We know that's the best way to eliminate germs as long as you do it the right way, 20 seconds. The temperature readings for students, we know that we need to rely on parents. And, you know, I talked about that Facebook event the other day. I will continue to talk about this. Parents not being mean about it, but you have to be parents and take the temperature. If it's 100, you need to keep your child at home. That'll help stop the spread. Regarding temperature readings for staff, we've done that from the onset. Anybody that's come, any staff member that comes in the building must do a self-check. So even in PAC, we have 3 different stations that we have. We will have other stations in each building as well. The social distancing, we know that's critical. That is the major piece of this whole thing to eliminate the spread. So each building will have a plan. We know that there's a lot of great work that's already been done, but we talked specifically today about signs that we need to buy. There's a lot going on, and we know that in some cases we will not be able to social distance. And so parents, you need to know that. So for us to be able to transport students, we can't double our bus fleet. We can't do it. We have a lot of buses that run. If you have a son and daughter, or 2 sons or 2 daughters that come on the bus, they will sit next to each other in every single case that we can. But in some cases, there may be 2 to a seat, and we need students to wear masks when they get on the bus, and that will help stop the spread for sure. So there's a lot that's going on, but we will do absolutely our very best social distance the entire time. But I'm just going to say this for those that have had parties at your house, and I know that some of you have, to say that you're social distancing the entire time. I've driven by some parties. I'm not saying that's happening. But it's really, really important that we do that, but we're not perfect. And so you just have to understand that in those times when you see students congregate, we will do our very best to move them on. Regarding the transportation, they will be sitting next to students, either in front or behind students. That actually would be within the 6 feet. So we understand that's how we have to get kids to school, and we're going to have to really evaluate that if we're going to do A week, B week, and some of that may be determined on the number of kids with transportation. And Dr. Phillips, you want to talk about any comments or questions that people
Well,
have?
I think what occurred last week on, was that Thursday? We had 2 Facebook Live sessions. Mr. Burton did a fantastic job with that in terms of presenting information and clarifying information as well. And then obviously at the end of each of the sessions, there was questions. And then we all chimed in on some of those questions to help parents to get answers. And so a lot of the concerns that they had, because they had already completed some of the surveys, a lot of those questions were answered, last week. But, they obviously have some concerns about their students wearing masks, especially the younger students. They shared information about making sure that we have student engagement. Some of the things that they actually had shared at the survey that went out in June, when we talked about the experiences that they had. So we are making sure that we address all of those concerns. Just recently, we had actually today, we had a task force meeting with district staff, and really went over a lot of those concerns as well. So, there are, I don't know, like 400, there are lots of comments, and I wasn't going to go through all the comments because a lot of them are really the same kinds of things. Just in terms of, some parents say, I'd rather have my child to do remote, which is obvious, obviously they've shared that with us because they made that selection. But we have reassured them that the experience that they had last spring is a different experience, but we also want to hold parents and our students accountable as well, because, this is real school, if you will. And so the expectation is there, and we will, make sure that we share that information with parents and share the protocol around grading and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the kind of conversations that we had today at our task force meeting, and we'll continue to meet with this team as we move forward with, with addressing the concerns. The 14th is the last day for parents to respond. If we don't get, like right now, we're close to 30%, 29%, we're going to start calling, knocking on doors. We want to make sure that we address, that we make contact with every family. And so that's one of the reasons why we ask the parent's name, the student's name, telephone number, email address. We have all of that in the survey so that we can make sure that we make contact with them.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Phillips. And so some of the questions that came back on the survey multiple times over, what's the plan if someone tests positive for COVID-19? It's a great question. So if someone tests positive for COVID-19 and they're within the 6 feet, okay, for 10 to 15 minutes, if they're around people. Now, I believe that is going to go to 15 minutes, but right now in Hamilton County, they talk about 10 to 15 minutes. If they're around somebody, so if Dr. Hawkins and I are talking for 15 minutes, within 6 feet, I test positive for COVID, Dr. Hawkins needs to be quarantined for 14 days. So not everybody in the classroom will need to be quarantined, or everybody on a bus will need to be quarantined, or everybody in a cafeteria, or walking to and fro. There is going to be COVID-19 in and around us all. The key is to limit the exposure, the time when we're next to each other for within 6 feet, and that is with masks or without masks. Nothing trumps social distancing. So that is absolutely one of the critical questions that came out. So we will be making phone calls and saying that somebody, we'll be looking at videotapes, we're gonna be talking to kids or whatever. Anytime we get notified that someone tests positive for COVID, we have to go back and help the county by tracing where that student was. Now, if somebody is positive, when they get that positive result, they have to go back in their own memory and give anybody who they were in the close proximity with for 10 to 15 minutes, they have to give the names to the county. Then they have tracers that go do that. Now, could be a long time. If somebody calls us and says that they've tested positive, we know because we're gonna have assigned seats on buses, assigned seat in classrooms. We're gonna be able to know right away. The best that we can, we're doing some research, which students we need to remove. Now, nobody's gonna come to school that's gonna be symptomatic. No one's come to school that's gonna have COVID, that's been tested positive. They're not gonna come to school. But this is a specific example of what could happen. A student comes to school on Monday. They're totally fine, feel great, no issue. Tuesday they come to school, feel great, no issue. But at 9 o'clock at night, they lose their taste of smell. They start feeling a little bit nauseous. They may even have a temperature. They don't come to school Wednesday. They don't come to school Thursday. Friday it's worsened. They actually get a test on Friday. Don't know the results for a couple days. So on Monday, they get that result, that they're positive. We have to go back to the last time that child was in school, and then go back 48 hours from the time they were symptomatic. That's how we are going to do the tracing. So there will be times when kids will have to quarantine for 14 days. There'll be time they'll have to quarantine for 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, depending upon when they were last in contact with that student. So there's a lot of moving parts. We know that. It's going to be we're going to have a lot of flexible thoughts, because some people you'll hear had to quarantine for 14 days. But in that case, the example I just gave you, it would be 7 days, because we found out on Monday, anybody who that child had contact with on Monday in close proximity, or Tuesday in close proximity, would then have to quarantine. So you get credit, even then when that kid said, young man or young lady was out of school, you would still get credit for that time. It's a last contact. But there's going to be situations that, are going to be pretty crazy. But so that's it if they test positive. Can you change your option for next semester? Absolutely you can. You don't have to do that. That is going to cause some scheduling issues. We know that. So if you choose to come back to school in January 21, we're going to ask for everybody that when they're coming back to be patient with us, because that is going to be pretty difficult to do in a short period of time, but we have great staff, and I know we'll be able to do that. Well, there'll be an opportunity for a child to have one-on-one instruction with their teacher. Some of that will depend with remote learning, but there's going to be interactions for sure, daily interactions with teachers. And we will continue to involve parents in the entire process, and we know that student engagement is critical. And there's also a couple other questions, too, that have come up as well. Some of those I know that we talked about with the social distancing on the bus. It's not going to happen. In some cases, we'll be able to do it. In others, we just won't. Will restrooms be monitored and cleaned on a regular basis? They will be monitored. They will be cleaned. We're not going to have somebody outside of the bathrooms, but we know when those need to be cleaned. So we're going to do that. Classrooms and desks will be wiped down after every single class that change, and so we're gonna have to rely on some students to help. And with, spray bottles and so forth, we priced out, if we were able to get those wipes, the disinfectant wipes. Take a guess how much it would cost our district to have disinfectant wipes, 6 bottles for each classroom in the district. Anybody? If you guessed over $400,000, you'd be right.
What?
That's right, 452,000.
450-something thousand
Wow.
dollars. Yes. 75 to a case, and so we know it would be very, very expensive. We're going to have to rely on students to be able to, when a teacher walks by or someone walks by and squirts that, we're gonna have to be able to do that. Now, we have several systems, including one cleaning system that is going to be like $55,000. It's gonna be taken out of CARES dollars, and that is a system where every 30 days, and they say that this disinfectant film that goes on, it continues to disinfect for 30 days. But we're not going to just leave it at that. We're still going to disinfect. We also have the Rotc 360 devices, and I know some of those are on back order, but when we get them, so every school will have 2, and we'll be able to kind of move those around in all the buildings, and we'll be able to disinfect every night with deep cleaning. So we will do our part. Again, if you're picking up your son or daughter at the end of school and you see kids running outside without masks on, please know that we have done our due diligence by telling kids to keep their masks on and whatever, but kids will be kids, and they're going to congregate, and we're going to need everyone's support by keeping kids socially distant the best that we possibly can. And then we do know that there's been some questions on the survey about starting later. We know that the later we go, the more behind our kids are going to be in general. Every student, no matter where you are, will be behind the longer you stay, which is why earlier in the consent agenda, that passage of the calendar it was critical, and adding the 5 professional development days, the first 5 days, added additional professional development and teacher work days, why that was so critical, so that we could actually continue to do the work, because at any point, we're going to need to snap our fingers and the entire district is going to go remote learning. We don't believe that's an if, we believe that's a when. And so our teachers have been amazing, they will continue to be amazing and work very hard to have innovative, creative lessons and specifically be ready to go remote right away. We have plenty of masks for our staff and teachers, but just like we do with our students, many of our staff will come with cloth masks. That will be huge. We are requiring students to wear masks. We've given parents 6-week lead time to make sure they get 2, 3, or 4 cloth masks, although we do know that we have several entities that are donating masks, that are making cloth masks, and so forth, so that's great. And again, we're requiring students to have masks, and we feel that it's not too much to ask. Some of the questions that pop up when it comes to younger students, the American Pediatric Association, they do not recommend mask usage continually for young students, K2. They don't recommend that at all. We will try to teach that good habit, but that's not going to be all the time. We know that our teachers do a great job and want to work one-on-one with students and in close proximity. We are not going to encourage that. We don't want that. If they do, it's for short periods of time, because ultimately, if that student tests positive, then that teacher goes on 14 days quarantine if they meet that exposure. So anyway, and then on the back, I'm sorry, Gina.
When you get done, I'll ask. You want me to ask it now?
Please.
You mentioned the quarantine. Now, if I'm a teacher and I contract the virus.
Yes.
And I have to be quarantined for 14 days, do I have to take my own personal sick time, or are you going to give me the 14 days off?
Chris Petter and I talked about, there's a couple different scenarios. We believe that that is just going to be, they get those days. We know that if someone's out of sick time, they're not gonna get docked pay. That if they're completely out of sick time, those 10 days is what we believe will be granted for sure. And then, Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything on that?
We have a lot of changes to FMLA, so we'll follow all those rules. Next week, Ennis Britton, our law firm, is hosting a webinar to review all that new law around those. And we'll have people attending that, and we'll have to get our processes and procedures
Yeah.
in place so that
Good.
when it happens, we're ready. And
I'm just-
we're treating everybody the same.
That's good, but I'm just saying for clarity's sake, if I'm a teacher, even if I do have that sick time, are you gonna make me use my own personal sick time? Or
That
you
will
just gonna give me 14 days?
That will depend on
What he
Each
says,
case.
what the lawyer says, okay.
federal law, and we're gonna follow it, and we're getting trained next week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but just to be clear, because we've probably all seen the guidance, that you're not supposed to, if anybody does have that, they should not, if they're going to quarantine, they shouldn't be held responsible for that.
Good.
So that's what the guidance says, and so, again, Chris will have more information on that. But if you go to the back of the page, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Before we go to the back, you said nobody's gonna show up with COVID-19?
I said that?
No, he didn't say that.
Somebody rewind that to go there.
Okay, so-
No,
You didn't say
we know,
COVID-19, you said.
we know that there will be
It's
cases
gonna
of
happen.
Oh, okay, so,
COVID-19.
so how are we gonna expose that? How do we,
Are
How
we
are
taking
we gonna know?
temperatures? Yeah.
so are we shooting a gun?
We're
gun?
requiring our parents
Oh, no, that's
to
not gonna work.
Uh-oh.
take temperatures.
Tom,
That's what we're doing.
99% of our
right now.
parents are great and wonderful.
Tylenol.
Uh-oh.
Huh?
And if there's,
Tylenol.
if there are,
Oh, yeah, lower that tip, 1%.
if there are
1%.
issues with parents that can't take temperatures or need additional case, I am telling you, the kids are not going to be allowed to come to school. And we're working on some of the protocol right now.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, that's what I wanted.
Because some of the kids coming on, there are districts that have, and we've been on all these calls, there's districts that say, we're gonna take temperatures when the kids get to school.
That's a good idea.
That's a terrible idea,
Why?
because then they get on a bus with a temperature.
Right.
That's wrong. So then, we're not gonna allow we cannot do that. We're gonna be exposing an entire bus. And anyone that's close to that student, that temperature needs to be taken on the front end. So when do you do that? This is why it's not as easy as people think.
Right.
Because you'd say, well, you could do it at school. Well, that means that a parent who drops off their child and the kids are in line to have their temperature taken, all those kids now are exposed. If they're waiting in line, you have upwards of 1,500 students in the high school that need to have their temperature taken before they come into school. And you have 4 entrances or 5 entrances to the high school. So when you look at that, it's 300 per entrance and getting that, and then we're not gonna lengthen the school day or
Right.
whatever. It's
Yeah.
very, very, very convoluted.
I was gonna say,
But-
just the instructional time alone. I mean,
Okay,
I got
we're all in
questions.
agreement, so we're saying, what will be the process? A lot of
Yeah.
parents would,
Currently,
I'm a parent, I would like to know what the process is.
currently, we are saying that students must wear masks, parents must take temperatures. And if the temperature is 100, we're asking them to keep the children at home. That's what we're saying.
Okay, you know those guns cost, $60.
$64, yeah. 64?
Yeah, with tax.
Or the
And then
regular
some people buy the
thermometer
one
is
for the
$5.
barbecue grill, which is the wrong one to get. I'm just saying,
I was gonna use that on their kid.
I mean, that's what Menards was pawning off as the normal ones. You know,
We-
pointed at a piece of pork on the grill, you get the proper temperature. So my question is, if we're dependent on parents as our line of defense, that's,
Yeah, I gotta say something when you get done.
go ahead.
You know, in the best of worlds, Mr. Burton, in the best of worlds, every parent will take their child's temperature in the morning. That's the best of worlds. But when you really look at the reality of it, even now, before the COVID, There were parents who would send their kid to school knowing that they had a temperature. Now, if they knew they had a temperature before the virus and they were sending them to school, they're a single parent, they have no sitter, they have no daycare, they must work. It's not like, will I go to work? No, I have to go to work today. Do you really think they're gonna not send that sick child with a temperature to school?
And we're not putting you on the spot.
No, not to you.
Well, no, actually you are, but I'm totally fine with that. I'm a
I don't mean
superintendent
to
of a
put you on the
big,
spot, but
of a big
I'm
school
just saying,
district,
in
so, yeah.
reality, there are teachers that I know who have told me, people will send a sick child to
Right.
school.
And this is when kids come in and we have our staff, and if they see stuff, there are kids all the time that go to the nurse's office the second they get there because they don't
Right.
feel good. We have a protocol, and we'll have a protocol
Right.
right there with students that get temperature taken. But as sure as we say, we're gonna take temperatures for everybody, we're gonna have, there's kids at our bus stops that will not get on that bus with a fever. So that child goes where?
Yeah,
Exactly.
They go back.
that's a problem.
So then what right.
I don't
So then
know.
exactly. That's why we need to have parents be parents and take temperatures, because we cannot ensure that we can get kids to and from in a timely fashion. If we have an aide on every bus, or a bus driver takes temperature, and if it's 100 and sends that kindergarten, says, you can't get on this bus because you have a 100-degree fever, and then they walk back and mom and dad already left to go to work,
That's a problem.
well, then it's all the way around. That's why we have to require parents to take temperatures. And we will help, we will provide as much information as we can. But again, there's many entities that have out there, if there's people that don't have thermometers and they don't know how to do it or whatever, we have a hotline that people can call, and we'll do whatever we can. But I am trusting our parents. I
Okay.
am going to trust our parents. They're not perfect. No one's perfect. But when that happens, we have to have a protocol in place, and we will have a protocol in place. Because again, I just want you to think about this. Every single student, we just saw this, 1,200 students that say they're going to ride the bus every day, and that's only a third of the district. So 1,200 kids, you have to take 1,200 temperatures the second those kids get on a bus. Because they're not getting on a bus without, if we're going to do this, they have to have their temperature taken.
'Cause we
That's
can't
going to
social
double
distance.
the amount of time it is.
On the bus.
We're going to have to pick up kids at 5 o'clock in the morning.
It
in
sounds
some cases.
difficult, very difficult.
Tom, just
Yeah.
curiously,
Please.
okay, so we get the kids to school, and a temperature happens to happen while they're at the school. What is our process in terms of separating those kids out? And I ask that because I don't want us to make the assumption that just because the child has a temperature, they have COVID.
Exactly.
Right.
So if you put all those kids who happen to have temperatures for a given time frame, because now we're more susceptible to think about it because they have a temperature, what's our protocol on how we separate those kids away from other kids and from each other?
Sure. That's a great question. And Dr. Phillips has
is.
done a great job with, and Ms. Tanya West-Wright as well. You
Right.
want to talk about what
Right.
every principal's done?
Each of the principals, as he said, each of the principals have come up with a process to use. They've actually identified a isolation room, if you will, where they can have the child go. Obviously, the nurse is going to be a part of that conversation as well, and they're going to do the screening to determine, if it's 100.4, if it's higher or whatever. But they've actually identified an area in which the student will be. So we don't want the student to stay in the nurse's office because obviously other kids are coming in. So we do have that, they've identified a room. And some of the rooms are bigger, some of the rooms are smaller. You know how our space look in many of our buildings, but they've identified an area.
And to that end, again, because we're more keen to temperatures now, I can think of when we get to flu season, particularly, that you may have 10 kids, 15 kids, 30 kids, who have fevers, again, but not necessarily COVID.
Yeah.
So do we have something in
Yeah.
place to handle that if that happens?
And I don't know how you tell the difference,
But you
actually.
can't
You
until they
can't.
test.
I don't
So
know.
I think you almost have to make the assumption that this may be COVID and deal with it from that standpoint, because.
But that would mean you would have to separate those kids from each other as well.
Right,
so-
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we also have, and one of the things that we need to also consider is HIPAA and the privacy rights of each student. So we know that there are some entities that are looking at these infrared devices that take students' temperatures or people's temperatures as soon as you walk in. So think about that violation. If we're walking, and again, say everyone walks in, I'm in the middle of the pack, and I have 101 fever. It's gonna be like, Burton, get over there. And Simmy, that's gonna be a violation all over the
Yeah.
place. I don't know how, the only way
That's a
we could
public health
avoid
thing.
that is if we have parents that are gonna do their job, and there will be kids that have COVID that enter our building. We hope that none of them have fevers. We hope that they're all asymptomatic, but ultimately, we will have a process for everything that we could think of right before school starts. But there's gonna be things that we will not have thought of that come back. That's why it's really important for us to continue to stay on these calls and having lots of people talk about stuff. We've taken part in great webinars and Zoom meetings with people actually across the world. Dr. Phillips and I were in one. We've really taken time to learn from people that are a little bit ahead of us, and we think that that's really critical for us to make the most informed decisions that we can. But if I may, we have another entity that's really, really important. That's our staff, the great staff that we have. So we have about 85%, actually a little bit more than that, about 90% of our staff that have filled out surveys thus far. We still need, so the staff, if you're watching, you haven't filled out your survey, please make sure you fill it out. But we have, given the current state of the pandemic, when school resumes in August, do you intend to return? Now, there's certain caveats. If that answer is no, because it's not just, hey, they don't feel comfortable coming back. There has to be a procedure. We have to get a doctor's note for that to happen. But we have about 90% that say they're coming back. We have about 8% that say currently, right now, they're uncertain. And knowing some of them, well, I could definitely understand why they need some additional information. And then we have 20 total staff members that say that they're not gonna come back. And we
You
have
only
it in
have
here,
7%
medical document.
uncertain, right?
I'm sorry?
You said you had 80% uncertain, you mean 7%, don't you?
We had about 88 point, if you're writing down these numbers, I'll give you the
Oh, I
exact
was looking
ones.
at, I thought it said 7.8% were uncertain. I read
Right.
it wrong, sorry.
That's okay. So, anyway, so when we look at those that would not return, there's specific assignments they would have with remote learning. That will happen. And here are some of the concerns about coming back, which I think were great. This is a great question to have. So, was the availability of disinfecting materials. So any staff that's listening right now, every single room will have disinfecting material. Every single room will have sanitizer. We'll have sanitizer in all the big areas. We'll have sanitizer. But again, nothing will replace the fact that a good hand washing technique. Also, we always have concerns about being able to follow all the different regulations that exist. There's a lot of regulations that exist. So we're gonna work overtime to get that done. And also classrooms and offices, making sure that those are all properly disinfected. And then having interactions with one another. That is a concern, that we will not be interacting like we did before. And quite frankly, Lily and Susan were teachers, and that, hey, we're going to teacher's lounge and we're gonna eat together and we're gonna, have cathartic conversations. And that can happen, but you better be socially distant. Because if not, if you're really sitting in close proximity and someone comes down with COVID, you're gonna be quarantined for 14 days. And again, with quarantine, when that happens, doesn't mean, again, so if I'm quarantined because I was around somebody who has it, doesn't mean that I can't work. It just means I'm not gonna be working from school.
Right, 'cause-
So there'll still be work. Now, if I have COVID, that's something different. So just wanna do that. So, again, we've had great staff support filling this out. We definitely need, some additional staff members to do some other work, but ultimately, that's the report. Thanks to Dr. Phillips, great team, and that Facebook Live event, I thought it was, both of them were very successful. We answered a lot of questions. But I tell you, the work that was done behind the scenes was enormous. So I always get nervous when I start thanking people, that I'm gonna miss a few, but I'm gonna do my very best. So we had, obviously, Dr. Phillips, Ms. Tanya West-Wright, Dr. Jamison, Dr. Kokar, Ms. Teresa Warren. We've had, of course, Chris Lockhart and Tricia Roddy, and literally the list goes on and on and on and on, because it wasn't just them. And there's great support, Mary Slaughter, Nancy Bortle, Tanisha LaFleur, and it just goes on and on, Janet Lanzarato. So we certainly appreciate the great work that everyone's putting in. We will have more events coming up the closer it gets to school. We will continue to push out information the best that we can to provide as much information for parents. But as right now, it's trending. If those numbers are scalable, and so if you have 30%, if we have about 800 students that have chosen online and remote, if that's scalable up, then we're looking at over 2,000 that are going to choose remote, whether it's semester or year-long.
There's, for some parents, some confusion because of the word survey, so they still think you kind of want to know what they want to know. They're confused about that we're asking for their choice. And some of them still think that they're just talking about what, a preference, as opposed to getting that choice that you need in terms of for scheduling. So
Sure. Yeah, and that's why I think, when you look
I
at,
guess the word needs to be option rather than survey, but I
yeah.
don't know. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it says intent to return, and it does say option, but it does say survey as well. And that's how we make the decision. But you're absolutely right. I know that we did a really large survey before to try to get as many people to respond as possible about what their choice would be. But this specifically, we need the intent. This is your intent,
Right.
what you choose to do. But I appreciate that clarification. And also, just to let everybody know, while it is due, and I know Dr. Phillips mentioned this, July 14th, we have, I think we've had 10 different sessions where we've had, actually, I can see more than that. We've actually gone out in the community and we've had helped parents fill out the surveys. We've done that over and over. And
That's
anyone that
good.
we don't have, we're going to reach out and talk to. So if you don't want to be bugged, parents, and you're listening right now, please make sure that you fill out that survey. And again, you can find it if you lost the link or whatever, you just go to our website, www.princetonschools.net, and you'll find it right there.
I think that's so very good that you are using different techniques to do the survey. In addition to the online, you're actually going face-to-face with people. That's so good. Really
Dr.
good.
Phillips stood outside about a 95-degree day.
Thank you, Dr.
Getting some-
Phillips.
Getting some surveys out there.
That's good. I am interested in that. Oh, I'm sorry. No. One of the concerns teachers had, and you sort of answered it, but I'm not sure what the answer is for sure. Their question is, will the room be sanitized between classes? And will I, staff, teacher, be responsible for that? And will there be time scheduled for that? Does that mean, like, if my class is, maybe they're sixth graders, and I think you said earlier the students would have to clean it, but do you have cleaning staff that can come in after each class and wipe down the desk? Do you have enough? Do we need to allocate more staff or more money for something from a board perspective? Because to me, if I'm a teacher, number one, I don't want to be in the cleaning business as a teacher, number one. Number two, as a student, I don't want to be in the cleaning business either. Now, there's nothing wrong with the cleaning business. It's a very respectable job. But I don't know how a teacher would deal with if the students didn't clean up after themselves? And will the teacher feel safe enough, oh, I'll just clean it up myself? You know, I don't understand, you know, I'm not in the education business at that level to understand how that works. And like, if there's certain time, like maybe there's 5 minutes in between classes, do they need extra time to make sure the stuff is clean for the next group of kids? And maybe I'm in the weeds, I'm sorry if I am, but I'm just
You're
curious.
in the dirt.
I'm sorry, I'm past the weeds.
But, yeah, but
But
here's
these are
the
things
thing.
parents ask about.
But here's the
That's
thing.
weeds plural. Anyway, sorry.
So here's the thing. We will do our very, very best to think about every single thing. That is something we've thought of. And that's why we have to spend additional time and do that. Now, again, $432,000 or $52,000, we can have wipes for everybody. We could basically quadruple that and the amount of staff that we would need. And we can't do it. There's gonna be some time, we're gonna have to be able to say, look, I'm a teacher, I'm an administrator. If anybody has a problem, I'll go in, I'll clean the classes. I know Dr. Phillips will as well. We'll go in, we'll do that, because there is no job that's too small for us to do.
Right.
And we have to do it. Times are so different that we're gonna have to do things that we may not wanna do. That's already happened.
I
And our
understand.
staff has been unbelievable, and they've done a great job. So, with that being said, there's lots of questions that you guys probably even want to ask more. Some of those questions, I gave you 2 different booklets. One is the Reset and Restart
Oh, okay,
Planning Guide.
thank you.
Read to your heart's desire on that one, as well as the health guidance, and that's also another document, yes. And so, again, there's great information in there. We've devoured these, we have plans, and I would welcome any questions after you read these for sure.
I got one last one though. If Hamilton County is declared a purple county and the numbers come out by the end of this week, will you push back the start of our school year?
No.
Okay,
And just again, it's already pushed back. Just again,
It's
it was
still
it was
August
supposed to be the
20th
13th.
regardless
It
of
was supposed to be
anything.
the 13th. It is the 20th, and, you know, again, being on all these calls and all that stuff.
you know, okay.
Like, people, no, I'm not saying I know, Gina, but this is what I am saying. That people talk about Labor Day like it's some mystical, magical day.
Yeah,
What makes that, is that like, so Labor Day, after Labor Day, there's gonna be no more coronavirus? Right, there's not, so we need to take a look at our students, and again, if it's a purple and we can't open up, guess what? We're getting business done on August 20th. That's when we're gonna start. It may
Yeah.
be remote, but we're gonna get business done. Our
Yeah.
kids need and deserve the very best education. They need and deserve to start earlier. We do have some of our students that really are really hurting terribly.
Of
They're
course.
hurting terribly because of not being around, not having the interaction. They're hurting terribly because they're falling further behind. We can't wait. So if it's that bad, we'll go remote. And we're gonna have it done. And again, I have unbelievable confidence in our teachers. Unbelievable.
Tom, one question,
Please.
based on what you just said. Are we going to offer educational opportunities if a student is quarantined?
Yes.
Okay.
They go directly into
Thank
remote
you for
learning,
saying that.
Mary. That's a great question.
Okay.
Yep.
are we canceling choir classes?
Not yet.
Because I thought the CDC said singing was a problem or something.
Singing, playing instruments, all that stuff. When you look at the droplets, the droplets is what they're most concerned about, and that's why when you look at the 6-foot radius or 6-foot distance, that's why that is really critical to maintain that. They say singing, yelling, and playing instruments, you need to be further apart. So we do know that we are planning on, all sports are still planning on going right now. We're still planning on doing marching band, but I tell you what, they will be spread way apart, and Kyle Phillips and Great Music Department, they do a wonderful job. They have a very, very detailed plan.
Good.
What they have, just like we have for athletics. So we'll be moving forward, but, you know, Harvard was the first school, and Yale, they were the first schools to go all remote learning to end the semester. They were the first ones to do that, and then everybody followed suit. They have moved all fall sports to the spring. January 2021 is when they're gonna go. And we've had the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and we have others now that are saying they're only playing conference teams so they could control the schedule a little bit more. So stay tuned for what's going to happen with that.
Okay. So if you want to join us, I have a saxophone for you.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm staying away from instruments right now. Thank you.
And the price is right.
Any other questions or comments?
The only thing is that some parents did bring up about Great Oaks plan, and Mary Cleveland and I, we spoke about this prior to the Facebook Live event, and she answered that, so can I put you on the spot, Mary Cleveland?
No,
You asked.
Yes,
yes, you can put me on the spot.
thank you. Will you talk about the Great Oaks plan
Sure.
and Scarlet Oaks? Thank you.
Currently, the plan is to do an A-B schedule, and what that entails is junior and senior class, which is what Great Oaks entails, would be split, each class would be split into an A and a B group. And on Mondays, the A group will come, on Tuesday, the B group, Wednesday's a break, Thursday, A group, Friday, B group. On Wednesdays, they will be utilizing that time for kids with special needs, as well as Monday through Friday, any student can come to the campus if they need technology. So they will have it set up, social distancing, but technology will be available for all students every day. But again, they're gonna be split up into A, B groups. And at Great Oaks, remote learning is not possible due to the fact that they have to have hands-on instruction. So with that, they decided to go to this A-B process.
Sounds good.
That's it.
Pretty specific.
I have one more question.
Sure.
And I don't know how people do it, teachers do the things nowadays, but if a student is sick and the school can't get in touch with the parent, teachers used to drive a kid home. That doesn't happen anymore, does it?
It's not supposed to happen
Oh,
at all.
that, okay, so never mind.
Thank you.
So what would we do with the COVID? If the kid is sick and the parent's not reachable, what then?
You know,
Or is that something you're working
no,
on?
no,
Never
no, no,
mind.
no, no. We need to require parents to have their first priority, and I understand it's very, very different. I know that parents have to work and all that stuff. We're gonna have to try to figure something out, because the longer that child is in the quarantine room,
Right.
the longer potential exposure they have. Now, Dr. Phillips and I met with Dr. Jameson today. We're down to the point now, just to let you know, I know you guys trust us so much, we really appreciate it, but we're down to the point that we actually have, we have gowns, caps,
Seriously?
gloves, masks, face shields, hold on, the little medical boots that you put on, your shoes, everything, because we're gonna do everything that we can to protect our
think
staff
that's good.
and our students. And guess what? Still not gonna be enough. That's why we need parents, I'm gonna reiterate one more time, we need parents to take temperatures. Don't send your kids at a 100-degree. Keep them home. Make sure that you're feeding them plenty of liquids and all that stuff. It's actually really critical. We know that. We will be there. That your son or daughter can still be educated at home, remote learning. We'll do whatever we can to get you any technology that you need.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
First reading of the 2021 Polaris additions and modifications. It's under discussion. Does anybody speak to that?
It's a discussion.
Claire?
The Polaris, is anybody speaking to that?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on it? This is our second reading, so. Okay. But it's second reading, so it's not for a vote yet. So if you look at it again and you see something that you think is missing or should be changed, this is the time to let Mr. Burton know. I mean, before the next meeting.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say, not specifically about this, but just kind of protocol, is that when we look specifically at that, our very first meeting of the month, this is a regular board meeting, The second one is a work session. We work overtime to make sure that that work session is protected as a work session and there's no action items. Now, every July, there tends to be some that pop up. And we anticipate that that's going to happen again. It'd be silly to say that it's not going to happen or make any guarantees. Until we get to where we truly understand our new normal, and we're going to just continue to require flexibility from the board's perspective. And the only way that I would say that we can keep that completely a work session is if we add another board meeting so that we can actually talk about the different items. But as long as there's flexibility there, we can just add the items there, take care of it, and then we'll move on.
And speaking to that, so our next workshop will be July 27th. And, we have set some topics ahead of time. So one of the topics that we had was a preview of the report card from the state, but obviously they haven't been doing that, so we won't have that. The other item we had was corporate business partner programs. So we will keep that. Is there anything else that we want to add at this time for that particular session in 2 weeks?
Oh, since we won't be talking about the report card?
Correct.
I fielded a couple questions regarding grants.
Right.
And I would, if it pleased the board, I would like to really go a little bit deeper into detail and actually give some values of the different grants, as well as some other ones that we have forthcoming.
That's kind of an extension of the corporate business.
Yeah, I would
So-
say we certainly
Right,
could
so
do that.
we'll-
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, yes, we'll
Thank you.
definitely have that. Anything else need to be added, a desire to be added at this point?
I would love to hear more about the status of academics in terms of the IB program or other gifted programs.
For opening the year, or for, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I know we
So-
have to build kids into those type of programs, and I just want to know what's on the planning list for the beginning of the year to move toward that.
So, okay, it's an academic update that, with a focus on special programs.
Yes, please.
Anybody else?
I don't know if this next one, but at some point, I know we, as a district, have worked a lot on equity and inclusion. And given the climate of what's going on, the other big story, I'd like for us to spend some time understanding it from Princeton's perspective.
I
think that's-
agree.
I think that's on our calendar, is it not?
I don't remember if it was.
I don't know, do you have it?
I can bring them up, yeah.
Something.
On
I know
equity,
we've
yeah.
talked about it, but I don't.
Yeah, we
Right.
did talk about it.
We don't want it lost.
Right.
It was one of those things when the chart was on.
No, so I was only asking when, I think it's planned, but, certainly not one thing we would just want to throw in. So we'll make sure that Mrs. Petter gets it on our
Right.
calendar. We don't
Yeah.
have to do it on the 27th, but definitely we want that. And I want an update on strategic plans, but again, I don't know when that would be. Okay, so that's what happens on July 27th. And we are at reports, item 5, so treasurer's report first.
All right. I attended the remote version of the TURC meeting at Hamilton County. That's the Tax Incentive Review Council. We review all of the agreements we have with each of the communities. So Evendale was present, Sharonville, Springdale, and Woodlawn. And then we just go through each of those tax abated projects. And the council makes sure they're following all the rules. And then they vote to continue or not to continue. All the agreements that are in place were voted to continue. So
What was
great
that?
partnerships we have.
What was the part, what was it again?
TURC, Tax Incentive Review Council, run
Oh, that's what that is.
through Hamilton County Development.
And of those
Every
communities,
July.
of those communities you mentioned, do we have agreements with all of those communities?
All those communities, yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Again, I just had a note again on here to just remind everyone about the loss of the 1.4 million continuing for this fiscal year 21. We'll hope that's the only reduction. We'll know more as we move through this and the state reviews their revenue projections for fiscal year 21. We are anticipating some additional CARES dollars. So there's somewhere around 90, 100 million additional CARES dollars the state kept, and that they were going to determine how to use that money. So this is the amount of that money that they're looking to earmark for K-12, pre-K-12 education. So we're hoping that we hear about that money by late July. It appears to be able to be used for all the items we are currently using CARES money for: PPE, sanitation, remote instruction, all the laundry list of items that have been eligible. We should hear about that money hopefully by the end of July. I did want to ask the board, the July 27th work session, remote or PAC?
I thought it was at the high school, but are we?
That's the workshop. August meeting.
Oh,
Our August, I forget the exact date, will be at the high school at Matthews.
10th, August 10th.
August 10th, thank you. So the question is, do we want to do a workshop also in person like now or remote? That's her question.
Can I ask a question? What's the benefit to coming in person? I'm just curious, because whoever wanted to do this, I'm just want to know what was the reason behind that? Just given, I mean, again, we're in a county where we're in red, quite frankly, maybe going towards purple, and so I didn't understand the need or the necessity to do it in person when we've been given authority to do it remote.
That's a good point.
Good question.
Because
curious.
actually, I think doing remote would be fine, but when I heard about the possibility of doing it in person, I don't remember where it originated, but I thought it would be a good idea because I envision there being a separate room where people would be here physically,
Right.
who could look at a screen and ask questions, but I'm reminded that we voted in April not to have input from people at our meetings. But for that reason, since we can't have any input from people if we're here physically, I think it would be good to continue remote.
I was just wondering, because obviously we're not going to have an audience any more than if we're remote. I mean, the same audience exists via Facebook. So I wasn't sure what was the rationale in terms of why we're doing it like this.
I don't know.
Well, I agree with your comments. I too was like, why? I think the biggest advantage is what the public gets to hear and participate in. And when we're working remotely, that doesn't change. I mean, if anything, they're still getting a whole lot more, not participation, but a whole lot awareness of what we've been doing than what we were doing before we went to that. So they're listening, they're watching, and so that part's intact.
I'll give you one opinion, and that is we're asking our students and staff and parents to participate in person.
Yes,
And
we
the
are.
board, and the board is the leadership of the district, along with the superintendent, who's part of the board.
I think, though, as board members, some of us are in an age category that is purple, or it's a cautionary.
Because of the purple, because
I
as
mean,
we
it's more of
progress-
an end of, yeah,
I do, but I guess my concern is a couple things, and I remember, I think it was Susan who had brought it up at one point. We're also using taxpayers' dollars to open up this building just for us at night.
That's right.
And I don't know that that's a good use of resources just to accommodate 8 people on an
10.
evening. You know, again, you know, I'm looking at it from that standpoint too, that while we may be asking them to go back to school, at the end of the day, if we hit purple, there's a good chance they may not have to show up. So we don't know that right now. So as it stands, Hamilton County is red, heading
We're on our
towards
way to purple.
We all know that. Why are we using resources to show up in person for something that we can accomplish very well because we've done it on Zoom?
What's the, Christine, what's the cost to hold this meeting?
I would have to actually put those numbers together.
Okay,
I would.
that would be a good look at it. We're all,
I
Yeah, the
will
cost.
tell you that definitely moving a meeting to Matthews comes with more expense.
That's even a
because
bigger
of the
cost.
additional people we have to
Right.
bring in.
I know there's
Two.
no air conditioning running in this suit.
But Matthews does.
Costs
bring-
more money.
And if I was at home, I'd have air.
Exactly.
There you
Well,
go.
that's
Just be
You
clear.
have air too,
I'd
John.
have air.
Right. My house is air conditioned.
So,
I knew it.
you know, there's a few reasons, but again,
Yeah.
I just wanted to put the question out there because I wasn't sure what the rationale was behind it.
Well, I'm open to making the July 27th meeting remote, but I'm also open to coming in person. I'm very flexible, whichever way the majority wants to go.
My preference would be remote, but again, and I'm also concerned with the man hours and the physical preparation that goes into setting this up for us to do here.
If, I would say if we are purple, then we should be remote because the students will be remote.
Right.
If the students are not remote, then we should not be remote.
What do you think, Susan?
Well, I mean, I'm even older than Lillian, so I'm really in a purple group. So I'm perfectly happy to be remote for the time being.
But yet you come to the closet every day.
I know, but
That's just one
That's
person.
true.
not near anybody.
But that's one person.
The
right?
volunteers who come
Oh,
with.
yeah.
Well, but
You know.
they're really scattered, and
Phyllis
I
comes
can
every
tell
day.
you that one of my former students comes to help sometimes, and he's like a drill sergeant. And he meets them outside on the block and makes the list of what they need. And they go wait in the car, and he builds the list and takes it to them. He
Very
doesn't even
good
let them
system.
come in.
So are we saying if we were all 25 years younger, this would not be an issue?
No, I would
No, it'd
make
still
it
be an
an
issue.
issue.
I'm just
be an
making
issue,
sure
yeah.
everybody's mentioning,
Right. No,
we're-
I didn't mention age.
it's still
I mean,
an
No, no, no.
Okay.
No,
I
no,
did- I
not
did.
you.
Oh,
'cause-
I'm going to say, because
I mean, you're only 42,
Yeah,
so I
right.
don't know how you could.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
we're not gonna talk about age tonight.
If I could pull everybody
I'll just
together
have
just
a
for a
few.
second. If I could pull everybody together and just say this, that the intent of the board meetings really should drive any decisions we make. So when we look currently, we've had more viewership than we ever have.
Sure.
Other than maybe when there's TPPT discussions a long time ago or whatever. I don't know. I heard there were some pretty big crowds before. But we have so many people that are viewing. The reach has been great. So if for the work session, if we were to do remote, we are planning on having everybody back in August. Now, obviously, where we are with red or purple or whatever. And I personally have not heard people say the board is not, why is a board meeting remotely when we're expected to come in? I have heard people say to me that they've heard that. So I do think that leadership matters, and the closer we get to the beginning of the school year, because we had this, we didn't call all the teachers in today, we did everything through Zoom. So we're not pushing that right now, but as we draw closer, the expectation is that we're back running full bore, social distance, masks on and so forth. So maybe we look at the July one as Zoom, and then at maybe the August 10th one, we look at that and reassess and make a determination, because we can, as long as we give proper notification 24 hours beforehand, we're in good shape. But we usually make the, Chris, Thursday, Friday, Thursday, we usually make it public. So,
But,
I
Mary,
think the part of the leadership too is, as you said, is that we do what's smart. I mean, just because we can
absolutely.
yeah.
is not necessarily the reason that it.
Exactly.
Isn't this meeting tonight on Facebook Live as well?
Yes.
Sure is.
So,
Just because
it's being done the same way we usually do it.
Without close-ups
I don't
of our
want that in my
faces.
face
Oh,
either.
shoot.
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
hear what she said.
I
Um,
don't like having my back to them.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think Tom's suggestion is appropriate, because the 10th will be the first workday, potentially. So if we're purple, there won't be, I guess, in person.
We don't even know what purple stands for right now, but,
Purple is like, they're
I
gonna
mean, I know
shut
that,
things
but I don't
down.
know, I don't know what mandates will be put in place once we,
Yeah.
if we hit purple.
Yeah, so anybody watching, it doesn't mean we could be in school, we could
Right,
still
exactly.
be here, because I don't know, I heard today that we met, what's it, seven categories to determine purple, and we were 7 for 7.
that's what I heard.
So, I don't know what that,
Right. What
what
does
that
that even
means
mean?
yet, so
Right.
We'll
have to
see.
But that's, again, we've talked about flexibility multiple times. I think that's just the flexibility that, for us having, if we were to do remote in July and then August, we reassess to,
Taking everything into consideration,
yeah, I
would
just
you all
understand.
consider, Dr. Hawkins, we be remote in July, and that we continue to be remote throughout the coronavirus? Until the epidemic's over, let's remain remote. That's my suggestion.
And we've already passed a resolution that allows us to do that, but from what I heard, in terms of July 27th, which is our work session, will be remote.
You make the decision?
I mean, that's what I'm
Meeting
saying,
by
then we
meeting?
make the decision, because August, if it's important, if we've got teachers there, we determine what August looks like with the preparation that is,
Well, that's fine, but I'm just going on record right now.
okay.
Right.
My opinion, which you can't buy a bag of cheese with it, but I'm just saying, who wants to buy cheese? But anyway, I would love for these meetings to continue to be remote as long as we're in the midst of a pandemic. Does anybody else agree with that? Or
Well,
am I all alone?
I think for me right now, I'm okay with looking at it once we hit August, but saying that, there's a whole lot of other considerations, because if we're saying, well, because everyone's coming back and we need to set the example, that example cannot be set where, at least in my mind, that we're going to go back to what we were doing previously. So no matter how we look at it, we're not going to be doing what we've always done, meaning we won't be bringing kids in necessarily, to come in and demonstrate something that's going on within their schools. We won't necessarily have participation or put the tables or chairs back out here like we've done in the past. So there's things that are just not going to happen like we've done in the past, simply because kids are coming back to school. So I don't think that necessarily that means that we have to go back into an in-person meeting. I mean, that's my view. So I guess, yes, I'm somewhat agreeing with Gina in the sense that I'm not sure, again, for me, it's always, so why are we doing it? I mean, and I'm not sure I'm hearing the right reasons. I'm hearing, well, because we're telling everybody else to go back to school. We're not telling anyone to go back to school. Some of this has been by mandates.
Okay.
I don't disagree with either you or Gina, but I do think visibility is important to a significant enough portion of the district. The effectiveness of the meetings may be just as, or it may not be, but I'm just saying that faculty, students, parents, they're in. I'm not sure why we would be exempt from that.
They may be in, depending on what the
No,
parent
no,
wants their
I'm
kid to
saying-
do.
My caveat was, if they're not in, then obviously we're not.
Well,
Right.
but that could be, if, say, 50% said they're going to do it from remote.
Remote, yeah.
I mean, it's not all kids are in just
Right.
because we open the doors, because we're giving that as an option. So, I mean, I
50%
think
is a
that's,
significant,
it could be
either way,
a significant
50%
percentage that
is
says,
good.
well, I don't want my kid in the building.
Right.
But when you
So
talk
are we
about,
going to judge us based on that is what I'm getting at, or are we just going to make a decision based on what's best for the board?
And when you're talking about visibility, I mean, who's, the visibility of us to whom?
Right, we're
Certainly to
still
the
visible.
district, We're getting much more visible.
Right,
I'm
we
not-
are getting a lot
I'm
more
really
visibility.
not talking about visibility from TV watching or, you know.
Well, that was the word you used, I was just, so what?
I'm
what do you-
saying visibility from,
To see
Showing
us come
up.
into a
is it,
building?
is it safe?
From showing,
Is
oh,
it safe? And if we're saying it's not safe,
Well, I don't
then
know if
what
I'd be
message
saying
is
it's not
that?
safe,
Is that
is it
sending?
prudent?
well, I'm gonna be honest with you, I
well,
don't think it's
safe
safe.
or prudent, what message are we sending?
No, but see, every parent loves their child, and every parent is gonna do what's best for their child. And whether this school district opens on the 20th or the 21st or the whenever, every parent has a decision to make and a responsibility. So it doesn't matter what I think, it's what the superintendent has set up and whether parents wanna go along with it or not.
I think it goes back to what's essential. I mean,
Right,
you
what's
know, it's
essential?
like people going out to
Right.
restaurants and picnics, we don't need to be out in order to do
No.
our business.
No.
Well, I would hope that we don't equate this to going out to dinner, because I'm real hungry right now. But,
I see where you're coming from,
but
Mr.
I'm
Simons,
just saying
but
that we're
yeah.
asking people that if they want to participate, they can come. And there's a significant enough portion of folks out there that'll say, okay, why aren't you in the schools if it's safe?
Yeah, if you're letting the kids
If
come
it's
back,
safe
why
and
aren't you
prudent.
coming to your meetings?
Correct.
Is that it?
And I can understand if we don't want to do it for 2 meetings. I understand if we want to have a truncated agenda. If we want to flip the script and have discussions, is the one in live versus the longer meetings on Zoom. But
I see what you're saying. I mean,
Well, I think,
you
you
know.
know, I think we've kind of covered it all. And here we are, and thank you for bringing it up so that we could. But at least we know, as far as we're, for the next
For
month,
next month.
on
right.
June 27th, we will be remote. And August 10th, we will meet in person, unless
Somewhere.
something else happens.
what I'm saying is, I don't want to meet in
I
person
think we need
August
to,
10th.
yeah, because here's the other piece on that. The way it's been set up, we, meaning all of us, don't necessarily have to be here. I mean, remember,
Well,
that
I'll
was the whole
just call
thing,
in
that
on August 10th.
the Zoom
Yeah.
is available for anyone,
That is
so I
an
wanted to say
option
that.
that's open to us.
The other piece I was going to say to all of this is, I would much rather be in an environment where I could take the mask off and people can connect with me better than us sitting up here with our masks on, and I don't feel comfortable taking it off in this environment. So that was another piece for me, is that at least when we're in our respective homes,
Yeah,
we come off a lot better than we do, at least in my mind, because if you're talking about, am I giving you the impression of safety? You seeing all of us up here in a mask, I'm not sure I'm giving you the some kind of mentality that this is safe. I'm just being
no,
honest.
I'm in agreement with you, but I'm
So
saying this is what
I
I.
don't think this really helps me to convey to others that it's a safe environment, and I don't want to give the impression that it's not safe. I mean, again, I had to think about what you said, and I don't think this is conveying it at all.
no, this isn't safe.
Well, I think, and that's a very good point that you mentioned, but this is what our students and faculty are going to face.
I agree.
And so, all I'm saying is if that's what they're facing, we could face the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
this,
I'm not willing
again,
to take one for the team
Because
when it comes
the
to
whole
my
teaching,
health.
the whole teaching process where you can't recognize what half your face,
I
only the
get
eyes
it,
are
I
showing.
get it.
I mean, those are cues as to whether or not a person is absorbing the lesson or not.
Yeah,
And so therefore, I agree with you, you're not able to connect with your audience, but this is the same thing that the staff and the students are
No.
gonna face when they come to school.
that is something our teachers will have to go through in terms of reading people's body language and trying to understand from looking at a kid's face, how they're interpreting things.
Right.
It's gonna be challenging, but I feel for the teachers, the parents, the students, and I know that Mr. Burton is recommending what's right, But I'm just talking about myself from a personal perspective as a school board member, and keeping in mind the entire Los Angeles County School District is not opening till October. You got 2 teachers who worked together this past summer who did social distancing in Arizona, and 3 of them got the COVID virus. And I'm saying there's not enough known for me to be super confident about doing a whole lot of in-person meetings. And I'm just trying to be honest with you. I would feel more comfortable. At first, I wanted to do the in-person meetings, but I would really feel more comfortable at this point in light of what the CDC is saying, in light of what the Cincinnati Health Commissioner is saying. I would rather do remote meetings for the rest of the pandemic. But I'm not saying that's what our students should do or what our teachers should do. I can only speak for myself.
And you also said if you had a child, you wouldn't send them in.
Did I say that? I didn't mean to say that out
Well, but
loud.
we have that option.
But that's the way I
But
feel.
John, that is
But
an
see-
option. So we don't want to say that, because that's
I'm
not
not
a,
gonna say
that's not a
that.
bad option. I don't want people to hear that.
I don't
Well,
either. I feel
you know,
bad for
I'm not-
saying
I'm
that.
not-
Because I
I'm
wanna
not
make sure.
denigrating that choice,
Okay,
because
that
it
is a choice.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is,
I mean,
that
because I may,
explains how you
yeah.
feel that way. I'm personally sending my kid to school.
See, and
But that's
you
why-
have
Because I
more
think
in the
she-
game than I do, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
You
she
got a
has,
kid.
you know, it has all the other socio-emotional needs that all the other kids that haven't seen
Right.
each other for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So,
It's still an individual.
Yeah,
situation.
every
is
parent
with
knows
their
what's
kid, I
best
think.
So
for
the-
I
them.
mean, I can still
and
send my kids and
yeah.
not want to be.
I
there.
take back what I said. I don't know if I would send my kid or not, because knowing my
probably
kids, they'd want to come back,
Yeah.
because they'd want to be around their friend.
yes.
So the next meeting's going to be remote?
Thank you.
Thank
The
you,
next
okay.
meeting is
I just
remote.
wanted to check on that.
Thank you. So we'll determine
You know,
that.
I just wanted to put it
Okay.
out there. I just want all of them to be remote. I'm just putting it out there.
We
Okay.
heard that, and thank you for that.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. I'm glad you
We're
heard
gonna
it.
take it a step at a time. The next one is remote for sure. All right, so our next report is the
I
superintendent's
got one more
report.
quick thing. Sorry,
Oh,
Lillian.
sorry, you cut me off.
I just handed
Go
out.
ahead. What did you give us? Yes.
John Simons had asked about costs that we
Oh.
have related to the pandemic. The front side is what we have expended through June 30. And then the other side is the CARES, the initial CARES dollar funding plan. And it is just a plan at this point. And then I'll just offer the board that, how about monthly, if you want it attached to the financial report, I can just keep this, what we have spent to date going, and just
great.
add it to the financial report,
That's awesome.
okay?
great.
For tracking purposes.
Thank you.
Have you done a similar report on those other things you mentioned earlier? You've probably done it, I just haven't seen it. Maybe I overlooked it, but on how much money we've saved in food costs? You were working on that before.
Savings in food costs, I will have to work with Gene Sparks directly on that. I can tell you that the food services account ended in a better position this
I
year.
thought it would.
At the end of the year than it did at the start of the year, yes. And so they had, I think, maybe $150,000-$200,000 more in their account at the end of June than they did at the beginning of July last year. So food services is doing very well.
I figured.
Now, we are making some great expenses to help our people. The food truck that's going to be able to move food around this district is an added expense. It's going to really help us.
Balance it out, yeah.
It,
And just a special thank you to all the food service workers who
oh,
gave up their time, they're coming in, and the great work Jean Sparks and her
Oh,
group.
yeah.
But specifically, the frontline workers, and Dr. Phillips, how many times did we see when we went around to the buildings with the food distributions? We had so many people volunteer, but ultimately, the food service people said, we have it, and they did. It was amazing, so thank you. You know, there's so many thank you all the time, but as you were talking about food service, how
Food
could
service.
we miss
We're-
that? So thank you.
we're doing
Yeah.
well in that. It's a separate fund outside of general fund, so it's very easy to track.
Yeah.
And while there were certain revenues not brought in from students paying to eat daily, those expenses to buy all that food also was not incurred. So
Right.
we really didn't expect to see a net gain. We really didn't, but we had one.
Yeah, that's
So-
great. Mr. Burton, thank you, you and your staff, for such a good job of helping in terms of making sure that food distribution continued in the midst of this pandemic. I've been to a couple of the sites where you all donated, and even the Princeton Closet with Susan and the donations your
So
group
we
is,
did-
it's great.
We did, once a week, a jar of peanut butter, a jar of jelly, and a box of saltines. And also the Princeton Closet, if I can add this, we wanted the seniors to leave with a clean slate. So we did all their unpaid lunch debt.
That's
It was
wonderful.
Close to $3,000.
Excellent.
And then we paid some fees too.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm done.
Mrs. Cutter? Thank you. Mr. Burton?
Okay, just as a reminder to everybody that any questions that you may have regarding the reopening plan, anything like that, if you go to our frequently asked questions section on the website, which is just below, I promise you, you can't miss COVID-19. Click here for resources, and that's constantly rotating between that and click here for the survey. And then directly below that, you will see district news and frequently asked questions about reopening schools. So it's right there. Before calling, I would go there to see if that answers your question. If not, by all means, send an email, call, and as I always say, if it's anything really positive, nice, and whatever, feel free to get a hold of me anytime. Anything negative, get a hold of Dr. Phillips. So thank you, Dr. Phillips. I say that in jest, of course. So every year we do a diversionary court report, and I need to report this, that once again, the great work of Curtis Smith Sr., and boy, I tell you what a treasure he is. And he does our diversionary court cases. And so when you look specifically overall, we had 119 cases that were attendance related, and instead of going directly to court, we actually try to handle that from a diversionary perspective. And again, it was amazing, the work, the behavior cases, the total cases, all of that is certainly appreciated. And he details everything when you look at the attendance versus the behavior, the total cases attempted, because not everybody shows. Not everybody does, but 336. And again, instead of going directly to the court system and all that stuff, we try to take care of our own, have those meetings, work from a diversionary perspective. And Dr. Phillips, how many years has Curtis Smith Sr. been doing it?
Yeah.
A long time.
Several years. And again, he is one of our district's treasures, that is for sure.
Because I went twice with kids when I was still teaching.
And then, we have been very, very intentional with going out and trying to attract the very, very best teachers that we can. And one of the programs that we've been in is through the National Alliance of Black School Educators, and we've authorized this, and they send information to our African-American students, and they track what colleges they go to, they ask survey questions, and really, they ask a lot of detailed survey questions, and this is really informative for us, and we hope that this is going to create another generation of great teachers. And I remember talking to Gina Ruffin-Moore, and she talked so much about way back in the day, she would talk about we would get so many teachers from Tennessee State. And if we're not intentional with going out and trying to attract the very best teachers who are most representative of our student population, then we're not doing our job. And in fact, the other day, a young man from Tennessee State actually connected with me via LinkedIn. I read his profile. He was a very, very impressive young man. I called him, talked to him, and I said, before you accept any job, let me know. And he actually lives in Cincinnati, so that was good. But I tell you what, he lit up. You could just tell he had a huge smile on his face, and it was great. And we continue to work with not only Tennessee State, but all the HBCUs that are represented by Thurgood Marshall College Fund. We are the only mentor program that they have. We are a national model for them, and we're being very intentional, and we're excited about that. There's been conversations with our folks that have gone down and worked in different environments in Guatemala to try to make some connections down there specifically with, as it relates to some of our students that have come from Guatemala, how we could help ease the transition, as well as, of course, just trying to attract the very best teachers we can. Dr. Phillips has spoken at Xavier and UC. Dr. Toller has spoken at The Ohio State University, at Franklin, and other universities. I've gone to Wright State, UC, and many other universities, trying to attract the very best teaching candidates we can. But I tell you what, nothing replaces the authenticity that happens when you bring a group of teachers, support staff, administrators together through an authentic interview process. Because I tell you what, we got some superstars coming in this year, superstars. And I tell you, we are very, very excited. So thanks to all the teachers and staff, administrators who took part in the hiring process. Again, so many of them did a great job, but there's nothing more exciting than when people leave that and they're like, man, we got a great one. And that was great. And I'm thinking of several of them, but I know I heard some stories of a middle school teacher that we were able to hire, and they were full, they're so excited and all that. And just by happenstance, I was walking through HR, and I want to go back to school. I am telling you, the excitement and all of that and the engagement happened. So we're really excited about the staff we have. We will continue to always go out and try to be intentional with the staff that we hire that's most representative of our student population. And I just wanted to remind everybody that when there's policy that has technical changes, like a name, so for instance, Title IX, we had 2 people that aren't going to be in the district anymore that served as officers. So we're making a technical change to that. So in Title IX, compliance officers will be Dr. Kevin Jamison, he'll be the lead, and then also Dr. Mary Phillips will be secondary, but by and large, any of those issues that really come to surface, if any of them would, those are really serious claims, and the first thing we do is we call our attorneys to make sure in terms of compliance and so forth. So there's some training involved and all of that, but you can't get any better than Dr. Jamison and Dr. Phillips. Actually, if Dr. Jamison's watching, we can get better, and that's Dr. Phillips. But we'll talk later about that, Dr. Jamison. So other than that, you know, we've been rocking and rolling, doing a lot of stuff. You know, you heard from Chris, and really thank you, Chris, for the work that you've done in putting together all those spreadsheets. People like myself and Dr. Phillips, your curriculum team, we could spend money with the best of them. And those spreadsheets really, really helped kind of hone us in. Is that right, Dr. Phillips? Yeah. Chris Lockhart's here too. He knows we were spending that money. So anyway, thank you very much for doing that, Chris. We really appreciate the partnership with the Treasurer's Office. And the CARES Act dollars, we do anticipate getting an extra $250,000. And by doing then what we thought, so we will spend that the way that we always do with CARES Act dollars, and that's for the betterment of our students, the cleaning supplies, the personnel, and the instructional strategies to make sure that we deliver the best education that our students so richly deserve. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or other comments for anyone before we move into executive session? Okay. I will make the motion to go into executive session under section 121.22G1 of the Ohio Revised Code for the purpose of discussion of personnel.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter, please call the roll.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
That motion has been passed, and there will be no further action taken after that, after executive session, so we will adjourn after that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For executive session, we will
We got a majority.
You got 4 members.
I move we adjourn.
Wait a minute, but John's not here.
I second.
Return from exec.
We're
Oh.
returning from exec. That motion is that we're returning from exec at
Here he comes right now.
Are you,
Right here, John.
9:55.
he's recording.
And Ms. Petter, would you call the roll for the movement from
Susan?
out of exec?
Yep. Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Wider?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Motion passes. I
Adjourn.
move now at 9:56 that we adjourn.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Ms. Petter, please call the roll.
Mrs. Wider?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Enjoy your evening. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.